Hey, good morning. My name is Alex Beckett. I'm a research scientist in David's lab. I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of some of the recent advancements in fMRI that we've done in our group, just to give you a kind of a preamble to the work that's going to be presented later. So just to reiterate what David said, this is the NexGen 7T. It's a 7T MRI scanner specifically designed for high resolution MRI, specifically for EPI. It has a number of new hardware components, including the novel head gradient coil, a 120 channel receive system, and a 16 channel transmit system. And for EPI, the thing we care about the most is that we can read out our images a lot faster. So we can use much shorter echo spacings. So for a given resolution, we can collect an image much quicker, or for a given imaging time, we can collect a much higher resolution. So we can reduce echo time for increased SNR, we decrease the distortions in our data, we can reduce the signal loss from susceptibility, and we can also decrease blurring on the phase encode axis, and overall get out quicker, which can also help reduce our TR. So some initial work we did using high resolution VESO and V1. We just used a flashing checkerboard and we can see nice activation with a lot of high resolution features. And the key thing we can see here is that for VESO, which is a cerebral blood volume weighted contrast, we can see a lot finer layer details that are missed in bold due to the vein bias, especially the peel bias at the surfaces. And when we look at layer profiles across layer depth, we can see this nice double peak in V1, which has been seen in animal work, but not in humans up to this point. And in bold, you can see it to some extent, but it's masked by this peel bias to some extent. So VESO is kind of really what we want to be using when we're doing like layer work, which is what we're going to be doing in the rest of this presentation. So the first thing is some work we did in hippocampus, which is a very difficult part of the brain to image because of its location, and has a complex curved shape, and blood can drain to either the inner or the outer surface, depending on the subfield and the anatomy. So because we were able to read out our images a lot faster, we were able to collect our images in a single inversion to collect the cerebral blood volume contrast. If we had to do it across two, which is what people are using at Terra, standard Terras, you can see that you get these segmentation ghosts. And the important thing is we didn't see these in our data. So we were able to collect our images in 3.2 seconds. And our task was a autobiographic memory task, which was contrasted with periods of mental arithmetic to try and activate hippocampus, which is known to be associated with autobiographical memory. And we collected about 34 minutes of data. And these are the profiles across depth in the different subfields. The top is VESO and the bottom is bold. And you can see that in most of the subfields, the profiles are agreeing. So we can be reasonably confident that the profiles we're getting with bold actually are related to activity, neural activity. But in the subiculum, we can see this bias towards the inner surface with bold, which is absent from VESO. So if you are doing work targeting the subiculum, you might want to be using VESO to really believe in the profiles you're getting in this case. And because we had a short TR from the NexGen, we were able to contrast the elaboration and the construction phases of the memory task, where we were able to see more activation for elaboration in the posterior part of the hippocampus, which is something you would expect from the known properties of the hippocampus so far. And this is something we could only do on the NexGen because it was any machine that could get the short enough TRs to do this particular task. And then quickly pivoting to whole brain CBV VESO, which is a key goal of the NexGen 7T. The difficulty here is finding the right balance between coverage, resolution, and imaging time. It's particularly complex for VESO because you need to maintain your blood node contrast. The way we did it in the initial tests back in 2023 was we're collecting 4 inversion pulses per volume. So what this means is we would do 1 inversion pulse, read out our cerebral blood weighted a quarter of our K space, and then do 3 more to fill up the rest of K space and combine that into a single image. And what that meant was our TR in this case was very long, 11.5 seconds, which is getting past the point where most neuroscientists are going to say you're actually using a efficient TR. So this was like a good start, but we wanted to be able to go faster. And one thing that was limiting us was these fuzzy ripple artifacts, which Renzo Huber is going to be talking about in more detail, which are these kind of like very low frequency blotches you can see across the image. And the nice thing is that if you reverse your polarity, you actually end up with a different pattern of. So imagine that the EPI is flipping polarity right there. But what you can see is these ghosts change their appearance. And if you average across the different polarities, you end up with an image without these ghosts. And this is something we were able to use to really push the performance on the scanner to really get something that might be useful for neuroscience with whole brain VESO. So in this case, we're able to 0.85 millimeter isotropic voxels with 1 inversion pulse per volume. So we're reading our images a lot faster, which meant that our TR was now 4.8 seconds, which is long, but it's still usable for cognitive neuroscience. In this case, we're doing a movie watching task. So we just had someone watch 4 repeats of one of the movies from the HCP, and we wanted to see what kind of information we could get out of this data. And what we found was if we look at the bold on the top and the base on the bottom, we're able to identify the sensor-motor association gradient, which has been seen a lot in this kind of data. We're able to find areas that had a high hubness, so more global connectivity in the areas we might expect. And we're able to parcelate our time series into the kind of networks we would expect from this kind of data. One thing we did see that was interesting was that if you look at the similarity of the networks across depth, there's a lot of similarity across depth in bold, but in VESO, there's a lot more heterogeneity. So it seems like different depths might be connecting to other parts in different ways, which is something that we'd be really interested to dig into and see what we can get from VESO with that. An example here of a connectivity matrix in visual cortex, so just connecting across different layers and across different ROIs. So if you do it with bold, you see that everything's kind of connected to everything. It's hard to see any structure there. With VESO, you really start to see some features that could be meaningful. And what you see is there's not a lot of correlation between ROIs at this surface. So we're probably not just being driven by veins, and this is actually meaningful connectivity. But again, this is something we want to dig into further. So the NexGen 7T can be used for imaging protocols with a very high spatial and temporal resolution to really push what we can do with fMRI. And it's something we'd like to, very excited to dig into, and especially with our collaborators through the U24. And just one very quick thing to finish, we're still developing technology for the NexGen, including adding transceiver elements to our receiver arrays in collaboration with Sergeant Ginnemani to improve the SNR in the deep part of our brain, and with Jason Stockman to develop a high channel shim array for mitigation of the zero in homogeneities. So we're still developing the scanner. We still think there's a lot more we can do with it. And we're really excited to do that with our collaborators through the U24. Thank you.